How's it going, YouTube? And welcome to Planet Coaster. So this is my first big project that I'm working on here in Planet Coaster. It has been out for a while, and I know that. I'm just late to the game. I bought Planet Coaster when it first came out, but I just couldn't really get into it when I started playing it. I've really been feeling it the past couple weeks. I've been tinkering a lot with some other games, or game types in Planet Coaster, like trying to make parks and whatnot. So this is going to be a short series about building this first coaster. It's my first big project in any roller coaster simulation game. I used to play Planet Coaster, I currently play Planet Coaster. I used to play Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 a lot, but I never got super serious into it. So this is going to be one of my first attempts at building a coaster that is detailed and realistic. So as you can see here in this time-lapse footage, I'm working on a dive coaster, which I have at this point decided to call Greenhorn. Now, Greenhorn, if you're not familiar with the term, is typically a description or a word used to describe somebody who is new to an industry or profession. So I figured, as this being my first big Planet Coaster project, I thought that the name Greenhorn was really suited, you know what I mean. the name really worked well for this coaster, and it sounds like a good coaster name too. It's not completely, gibberish. It's not a super generic name like a lot of coasters have. So you can see in this video, I'm kind of working on the elements of the track for this first time lapse. I really want to include a lot of the key features that the dive coasters have. So one of my big inspirations was SheiKra in Busch Gardens, Tampa. One, because it was the first dive coaster in the United States, and two, I live in Tampa, so I'm very familiar with it. So it has a lot of the same elements as this that I'm building. It has about a 200-foot drop, which is what this in Planet Coaster has. It's going to have an Immelman loop right after the drop, which you can see is already there. And it's going to have a splashdown element for me, it's going to be near the end of the coaster, because you can see I'm working on it right now in the time-lapse footage. At first I wasn't sure where I wanted to put the splashdown, and I was going to put it after the drop. But I like the idea of putting the splashdown element near the front of the coaster, because it could interact with the paths a little more. For guests who aren't riding the ride, could easily see what's going on, and it's more of a more of a visual thing at that point, where everybody can see it. It's up front and displayed. But other than that, I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do, so I start fiddling with, you can see in the video here, I was going to maybe do a 0G roll, but I couldn't really get it the way I wanted to. What I ended up doing was just going back to the Immelman loop, changing its banking a little bit, and then doing a couple big a sweeping curve into a overbanked turn, and that goes up into the brake run. I was going to do the brake run earlier in the beginning, but the coaster was just going way too fast to enter the brake run smoothly and still be entertaining. I feel like it was really high up, and I didn't really like the way it looked. So I ended up going through and doing these big sweeping curves, going into the brake run, and then it goes into a dive loop-ish, kind of half corkscrew, half loop kind of thing, which you'll see in a minute here as I work my way towards the end of the track. And that's really about it for the layout. After that, it goes into a small airtime hill and some more sweeping curves, and then it goes into that splashdown element at the front. I really wanted to keep this track layout relatively simple and realistic, which is why I picked the dive coaster as my first one, because A, I have real world experience with it. I've ridden SheiKra in Tampa quite a few times, and it's a nice first coaster, I feel like, because they don't have a lot of inversions, which if you're newer to Planet Coaster, making custom inversions can be really difficult, and I wanted to make sure this whole entire track was custom built. I didn't use any pre-built inversion pieces because I wanted to make sure it was nice and smooth. So I built most of the track out of 4-meter lengths, which you might have noticed, to help with the smoothing in the end. And so the way the pre-built track pieces work just really messes with the banking sometimes, and I don't really like the way it turns out, so I really want to make a point to make sure everything in this coaster was built, at least for the track, everything was built using the 4-meter pieces and using just the standard, you know, bank and turn and lift controls, and not using any pre-built pieces. So dive coasters don't generally have that many inversions anyways, so it made it really easy for me to build a realistic one and not have to worry about making, you know, 2 loops and a corkscrew and a 0G roll and all that stuff. So I just did the Immelman loop and the dive loop, which is usually a backwards Immelman loop, but this one ended up being kind of like a corkscrew dive kind of thing, and then just working on some smooth banks and stuff like that at that point. So you can see here I'm finishing up the coaster layout. It does change a little bit here because I didn't really like how windy it was. It seemed kind of boring, but in the end I'm just trying to get this piece of track to connect up to where the splashdown element is, and that way you can go back into the final brake run and then back into the coaster station. So the rest of this time lapse is just me finishing up that section of the layout, and then also going through and changing up some of the supports. So when I recorded the footage for this and built this section of the track, it was actually before the 1.7 Planet Coaster update, where they added the in-game custom coaster support pieces. So I put in some of the supports. I had to turn off some of them because I used the 4-meter building technique, and it makes a lot of supports. But this ends up changing again in a later episode because I'm gonna use some of the custom supports from the game now to fix some of the weird supporting that the game generates for like the tall lift hill, and then some of the sections that like where the Immelman loop goes over the coaster station is going to have to be custom supported, and some spots like that. So that's going to be in a later episode though. The ending of this, I start doing the 4-meter smoothing technique, and I think I did that 2 or 3 times before recording the POV, which is at the end of this video. That is it for this episode, and I will see you in the next one.